New at 6, it may take weeks, even months, before a second, even larger surge of Haitian migrants reaches the Texas-Mexico border. As many as 60,000 of them, according to the Panamanian foreign minister who was in Washington this week, asking the U.S. to help with a regional response. Jesse DeGollado tonight talks to a local pastor and a local activist about what they've seen so far and what should be learned from it.
Not much has changed for the better in the Haitian capital or throughout much of the island nation. If anything, says this man, the state is going from bad to worse. The situation is worsening. It's becoming overwhelming for us, he says. There's no hope for us, especially the young people. Last month's surge of mostly Haitians may have been a first, but it won't be the last. Up to 60,000 more are reported arriving in Panama to begin the trek northward, like these families did.
It doesn't surprise me. I wish I would be surprised.
The pastor of Travis Park Church, Gavin Rogers, joined thousands of Central Americans in 2018 when they made the same journey. Fleeing many of the same extreme conditions, refugees around the world are trying to escape. One of the obvious differences in the eyes of some, says Rogers,
the darker of color they are, we see more resistance and more unrest.
Unlike the generous outpouring of donations like those collected by the Black Freedom Factory and other groups. If there's another surge as predicted, its executive director Camilla Factory says they're ready.
I'm very confident in the future of what we can provide. Now that we have the resources, we know the logistics.
The hardest part, they say, will be up to the sharply divided Congress passing long overdue immigration reform.
Immigration as it stands in the status quo of the United States is not sufficient or sustainable for the future of immigration.
Jesse DeGollado, KSAT 12 News.
Being made inside of Facebook are disastrous for our children, for our public safety, for our privacy, and for our democracy. Facebook knows that content that elicits an extreme reaction from you is more likely to get a click, a comment, or reshare. There's one thing that I hope everyone takes away from these disclosures. It is that Facebook can change, but is clearly not going to do so on its own.
That was Facebook whistleblower Frances Haugen testifying today about protecting children online with privacy regulations and laws. She says Facebook knows it's harming people, and a new report claims social media platforms like Facebook are encouraging illegal migrant smuggling and promoting hate toward migrants. NewsNation correspondent Janelle Fort is live tonight in Atlanta with more on this. Janelle. Well, Nicole, this is just an added layer to the heat the social media giant is getting in the wake of that whistleblower coming forward. In this case, migration advocates and cybersecurity experts want social media companies to take responsibility for misinformation that goes unchecked on their sites. New reports show finding human trafficking routes, modes of transit, and even discounts is as easy as a simple scroll through social media. And it's fueling the wave of illegal immigration at the border.
One of the group chats was called Caravan 2021. Now, the words were written in Spanish, but anyone who spoke Spanish and who came across that group would recognize it.
Our partner at theborderreport.com, Sandra Sanchez, says sites like Facebook offer free promotion for smugglers looking to lure in potential customers.
How is this fueling the crisis that we're seeing at the border?
Well, I think it's a communication tool that allows the migrants to hear from those who will provide the routes for them that, hey, you can come. This is what you need to do. It's really free advertising. It's the missing link that they need, but it's not correct information.
Sanchez says she's seen just how harmful the misinformation can be.
I was in Del Rio for a week. I was on the bridge. I saw thousands of migrants below me, crying, hungry. They were destitute. They were making tents out of carrizo cane. They all thought that if they crossed the Rio Grande from the Ciudad Acuña right into Del Rio, that they would be admitted into the United States, and they weren't.
Several cybersecurity and migration experts are now urging Congress to take action. They say Facebook in particular can and should do more to patrol its platform. In a statement, Katie Paul, the director of the Tech Transparency Project, told us, quote, Facebook's dominance in Latin America paired with their repeated failures tackling misinformation and crime has contributed to the surge of migrants at the border. As we've seen from the recent whistleblower reports,
Facebook was aware of how its platform was used to facilitate human trafficking of vulnerable populations. Facebook chose not to act, quite literally sacrificing people for profit.
Now, some of the actions these group wants to see taken is Facebook be required to remove hateful disinformation and posts that show intolerance for asylum seekers. They also want the social media company to ban groups that target migrants and vulnerable populations by encouraging them to illegally migrate to the U.S. Nicole.
It's not a closed border. You can only close it by having the resources to secure it and also have the systems in place. This administration did not step up and respond in an appropriate way, and that opened the door, and that sent the signal that it is an open border.
So Arkansas's Governor Asa Hutchinson there on a ride-along with Texas state troopers. That was last night, and he took a moment to, kind of express the fresh criticism now that he has for President Biden's immigration policies and the chaos at the southern border. He's not alone in all this. Now a group of Republican governors is headed to survey the situation for themselves, due there tomorrow. They're going to renew their calls for President Biden to do something about what's unfolding there. However, Texas Governor Greg Abbott is not waiting for the White House. He's preparing the state National Guard along the border as the steady stream of migrants is not slowing down. He's going to send them there. Look at them. They're readying. People who live and work in the area are fed up.
I feel it's the fault of the president. They felt that they had been promised by the president that they would become United States citizens.
It's been mounting bit by bit. It's not just a thing that happened like over the course of just 1 week.
Done nothing. Zero, zilch.
They must feel abandoned. I want to bring into focus now former acting ICE director Tom Homan, Fox News contributor. Tom, literally, it must feel to them that no one is hearing their cries for help inside the White House.
No, you said it right, Harris. They have been abandoned. So having the men and women of the Border Patrol, they've been abandoned. The Secretary won't admit it's a crisis why these men and women are working their butts off 24/7. The President had his first speech said, Border Patrol would watch children dying of starvation on riverbanks, did nothing about it. These are men and women in green, patriots, American citizens that saved over 8,000 lives this year. Children drowning in the river, or people abandoned in the desert. One thing I want to say, though, is to look at this, the bottom line is the Trump administration handed President Biden the most secure border in my career, which spans 35 years. I worked for 6 presidents. Illegal immigration down 83%. Most secure border I've ever seen. Why would any incoming president want to come in and tear it down? There is no downside in a secure border. There's no downside on less illegal immigration, less drug flow, taking money out of the cartel's hand. It's ridiculous that any president will come in and say, I want a less secure border. It's just ridiculous.
6 presidents, 35 years, and this is the worst you've ever seen it. And yet we hear from the Border Patrol Chief Rodney Scott, who was booted, saying this about terror threats at the border. So the topic's even bigger. Let's watch.
We have nation-state threats. We have terrorist threats we can't get into in this type of a forum, but they're real, they exist, and they want to come across that border. Statistically, it always includes rapists, murderers, potential terrorists, every single year. To think that there's not just as bad or worse people and those getting away would be naive.
Tom, I have to think in your 35 years as you describe them, this is what you're talking about by the worst you've ever seen it.
Yeah, I'm glad Roddy's a good friend of mine. He's an American patriot. I've been saying since I've been on this network almost 3 years that an open border means terrorists is vulnerable to terrorism. A lot of terrorists come up to the Darien Gap in Panama. The Panama officials just said they got a huge surge coming our way. How many known and suspected terrorists are going to embed themselves in these groups? The Darien Gap is the best known pathway for those who want to come here and do harm. And Rodney's right. By numbers, the data shows 20% of Border Patrol apprehensions, 20% by an average, have a criminal history. Now, there's almost 350 to 400,000 gotaways. These are people the Border Patrol couldn't arrest because they're tied up with the family groups. That's based on same sensor traffic, camera traffic, drone traffic. So if you got 400,000 gotaways and you say 20% of that, I'm not mathematician. That's like 80,000 criminals that might have crossed the border and not been stopped. So this border is vulnerable. It's vulnerable to, fentanyl, 92,000 overdose deaths in this country. An open border is a national security crisis, and I'm glad Rodney Scott's speaking out.
You mentioned the situation with Panama, and one thing that President Trump had at the time were all these deals in, the Northern Triangle countries, so on and so forth. Do we have enough friendships with people down there that they would look for the bad guys among them, or are they just floating these people through like, next, just head to America?
Panama, we have, ICE has a great relationship with Panama. I was down there meeting with those officials. We have actually stopped known and suspected terrorism right there in the Darien Gap, and we're able to deport them back to their homeland before they got to the United States. But their goal was to get to the United States. We caught some, but how many didn't we catch? Because you don't catch everybody. Like I said, 350,000 to 400,000 gotaways this year alone. Who were they?
Wow. Tom Homan, thank you for your time and your expertise. Appreciate it.
Sit we want to talk to you real quick. Can we talk to you real quick?
Actually, I am heading out.
But right now is a real moment that our people need in order for us to be able to talk about what's really happening. We need a Build Back Better plan right now.
Democrats are frustrated with Arizona Senator Kyrsten Sinema. That was apparent when activists recently confronted her at ASU about her opposition to a key piece of President Biden's agenda.
Yeah, Arizona's senior senator has a lot of power right now in Washington, D.C., but she's coming off kind of a rough weekend here. Our political editor, Dennis Welch, is in the newsroom with more. Dennis?
Yeah, Sinema was skewered on late-night television because of her opposition to President Biden's Build Back Better plan and her reluctance to answer questions about it.
On one side, we have the moderate Democrats, Kyrsten Sinema from Arizona.
Saturday Night Live roasted the Arizona senator.
Because I didn't come to Congress to make friends. And so far, mission accomplished.
Comedian John Oliver compared Kyrsten Sinema's behavior to a house pet.
She's impossible to understand, doesn't think in a linear process, and wanders off in the middle of a conversation. And it's not great when a senator's strengths are how I would describe any cat.
Jokes aside, anger over Sinema's opposition to President Biden's $3.5 trillion infrastructure bill is real and growing among progressives. In this 2-minute video, left-leaning activists confront Sinema at ASU and follow her into the restroom.
We knocked on doors for you to get you elected, and just how we got you elected, we can get you out of office if you don't support what you promised us.
Members of Living United for Change want Sinema to back Biden's Build Back Better plan that includes expanding social safety net programs and a pathway to citizenship for undocumented immigrants. President Biden was asked about chasing a senator into the bathroom.
I don't think they're appropriate tactics, but it happens to everybody. From the only people it doesn't happen to are people who have Secret Service standing around them. It's part of the process.
Sinema issued a statement about what happened at ASU that said, in part, yesterday's behavior was not legitimate protest. It is unacceptable. Republican political consultant Chuck Coughlin agreed the tactics were uncalled for, but questioned why progressives seemed so surprised by her opposition to a key part of Biden's agenda.
She campaigned this way. The progressives should not be shocked or dismayed in any way.
And we did reach out to that activist group, Lucha, and we just heard back from them a short time ago, and they said they claim that they are doing what Sinema isn't doing, and that is advocating for Arizonans. In the newsroom, Dennis Welch, Arizona's Family.
Okay, I'll be back.
Sit we want to talk to you real quick. Can we talk to you real quick?
Actually, I am heading out.
But right now is a real moment that our people need in order for us to be able to talk about what's really happening. We need a Build Back Better plan right now.
We knocked on doors. We need solutions. The Build Back Better plan has the solutions that we need. We knocked on doors for you to get you elected, and just how we got you elected, we can get you out of office if you don't support what you promised us.
We need 7 million citizenship for 7 million. We need the Build Back Better plan right now.
My name is Blanca. I was brought here to the United States when I was 3 years old. And in 2010, my grandparents both got deported because of SB 1070. And I'm here because I definitely believe that we need a pathway to citizenship. My grandfather passed away 2 weeks ago, and I was not able to go to Mexico and visit him because there is no pathway to citizenship. And if we have the opportunity to pass it right now, then we need to do it, because there's millions of undocumented people just like me who share the same story or even worse things that happen to them because of SB 1070 and because of anti-immigrant legislation. And this is the opportunity to pass it right now, and we need to hold you accountable to what you told us, what you promised us that you were going to pass when we knocked on doors for you. It's not right.
I'm a survivor of human trafficking, and it's because of the lack of worker protections that we don't have in the gig economy. I need you to stand by workers, lots of people who are like me, who became homeless and now just have the ability to rent to make rent. Will you support the Build Back Better plan so that we can have justice and solutions that we need for immigration, labor, climate change?
Pass the bill! Build Back Better! 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 Pass the bill!
Build Back Better, pass the bill. Build Back Better, pass the bill.
Build Back Better! Pass the bill! Build Back Better! Pass the bill! Build Back Better! Pass the bill! Build Back Better! Pass the bill!
Undocumented.
Unafraid!
Undocumented.
Unafraid!
Undocumented.
Unafraid!
Undocumented.
Unafraid!
Build Back Better.
Pass the bill!
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 I am
Somebody!
I deserve.
And I deserve
Citizenship.
citizenship! Right here! Right now! My father!
It's somebody.
Is somebody! And she deserves citizenship! Right here! Right here! Right now!
We begin with breaking news out of Cherokee County, where the sheriff's office has arrested a woman after they found 24 illegal immigrants inside her one Suburban. The shocking discovery was made during a routine traffic stop. Officials say Maria Lopez picked them up in Houston and was driving them to Mississippi and Florida. This wasn't her first trip either. Deeper into this investigation, officials say they discovered that Lopez had helped smuggle 12 separate loads of illegal immigrants into the U.S. We will continue to follow this developing story during our newscasts and on our website, ketk.com.
It doesn't end, does it? U.S. officials are reportedly preparing for what could be the biggest surge in migrant traffic at our southern border, illegal migrant traffic yet, estimating between 350 and 400,000 migrants will cross into the country throughout the month of October. Texas Governor Greg Abbott took to Twitter, writing, Texas National Guard is gearing up at the border for increased caravans attempting to cross the border caused by Biden's open border policy. They're working with the Texas Department of Public Safety to seal up surge locations at the border and arrest trespassers. 10 GOP governors are also having to show their support for the Lone Star State, or willing to show their support, by joining Governor Abbott on highlighting the crisis at the southern border with the hopes that the Biden administration may finally take some action here to do something about the border. Ned Ryan, CEO of American Majority, joins me now to talk about this unfolding disaster. Ned, I feel like it's just hard to even comprehend this for a lot of folks. We are, based on numbers we're already seeing, because the migrant caravans are moving, we are on track for what could be the biggest month of illegal crossings in the United States in 20 years, perhaps ever, at 400,000 is the estimate.
Well, this is all intentional. I mean, people keep on asking, why isn't the Biden administration doing something? I mean, they made it very clear when they came into office, Buck, that they were going to completely dismantle all of Trump's immigration policies, and they've succeeded. This is a crisis of the Biden administration's making. It has been intentional every step of the way. You know, and to highlight some of the things that are taking place, August of last year, of 2020, there are about 47,000 illegal crossing attempts. Only 10 were released into the interior of the U.S. this August. Fast forward a year, Buck, August of 2021, 195,000 were apprehended by the U.S. Border Patrol. Of that, almost 44,000 were released into the interior in a catch and release. And the amazing thing is, Buck, the Biden administration has basically told the Supreme Court, we don't care what you say. Back in August, by a motion of 6-3, they said that you actually have to do what the federal judge in Texas said and re-implement, remain in Mexico while any immigration proceedings might take place to see if you can actually legally enter this country, have any justification for that. The Biden administration has been stalling for about 7 weeks. This is all intentional, Buck, and I think they will continue to do it. And I would argue there's a couple reasons they're doing this. One, they think there'll be political power in this. You bring in all of these who will then be dependent upon the state and upon social welfare programs. You're going to increase the Democrat voting base. And then you have the Chamber of Commerce types on the Republican side that are refusing to fight it because they think they're going to get cheap labor. The ones that are getting the short end of the stick, the American taxpayer.
Here's Senator Marco Rubio, who is pointing out just how diverse the group of, in terms of nationality, the group of illegal migrants actually is. Here's what he says.
We have another looming migratory crisis on the horizon. I had a chance yesterday to talk to a number of the foreign ministers in Latin America who all pointed to this and all expressed like a lot of frustration that the Biden administration is just ignoring it and not doing anything about this. The first, for example, in Colombia, there are anywhere from 20 to 25,000 Haitian migrants in Colombia right now, and all of them are headed here at some point. Panama has about 60,000 or so in some point of transit, either just came through or still there or on their way in. There's a bunch of countries in Latin America. We don't know the full number, but it's in the high tens of thousands of migrants from Haiti and other parts of the world who are headed to the United States at some point.
You know, Ned, we were told earlier on during the Biden administration, it was because of U.S. policy in Central America. So, it's kind of our fault or something. You get people coming from all over the world, and they're basically doing this because they realize we got a big open door at our southern border.
The Biden administration basically from day one was flashing a bright neon sign down south saying we essentially have open borders, de facto open borders, because of what we've done on a variety of policies from the Trump administration. Two things that are really troubling to me, Buck. One is, is the Middle East, obviously, with Afghanistan and the Taliban and Al-Qaeda. How do we know, again, that they're not going to be slipping people in on the southern border? It's a national security issue on that level. The other thing that's really troubling to me, Buck, people that are advocating that we don't fix our southern border crisis, I'm only left with the conclusion they truly hate America. They hate the American people. They hate the American taxpayer, because only someone that despises the American taxpayer and the American voter would actually allow this to continue. And basically say, for all intents and purposes, we're no longer a sovereign nation because we can't enforce our borders. Therefore, the American constitutional republic, well, I think that's in question as well. If you can't have enforceable borders, how on earth can you call yourself a sovereign nation moving forward? It's insane.
Welcome back. 15,000 mostly Haitian migrants recently crossed the border, gathering under the Del Rio International Bridge. Texans now pleading with the Biden administration to end the chaos as the migrants are whisked away to communities across the U.S. 20-year Del Rio resident B. Vallejo joins me now. B, thanks for being here. I want to pull up some information here. This is according to the mayor of Del Rio, and this says that while that was going on, while that bridge was closed, $17,000 was lost per day, and more than 300 kids could not get to school because they couldn't cross where they needed to go. How did this personally impact you?
Okay, well, good morning. Thank you for having me.
Of course.
One of the things that happens is that these people come across, and the federal government is using tax dollars and is giving the money to the NGOs, and these NGOs are bringing these people over here. But when they come here, then they expect us to take care of them. This whole time, they've been receiving federal funds to do all of this and bring them here. And then they come here and they just leave them there. And a lot of times it's the NGOs that are supplying the money for them to ride the buses, for them to fly into different areas. Like in our case, they flew into Monterrey, and then someone had to charter the buses and pay for the buses. And all of that money comes from money that has been donated into the United Nations. And so, these charities bring them in, and then they leave them and they expect us to take care of them. Well, our little town, 35,000 people, there was no way that we could take care of 17,000 immigrants all in one area. We either fed ourselves and the law enforcement, or we fed them. And, churches got together and they were making sandwiches, and restaurants closed down so they could provide them with some food. But there was no way that our little town could pick up all the slack. We just don't have places available to help them.
The images.
And that's just, the federal government just...
Sorry to interrupt. I thought you were finished. The images from, the drone that we captured from that bridge. I mean, seeing those thousands of people underneath of it, it's truly devastating, seeing the conditions, seeing the amount of people. Have you ever seen that amount of people gathered like that in that area before?
No, but you know what? The interesting thing is that why did they gather there when they had been crossing, and they have a lengthy river to cross? I mean, the border is long, and they had been crossing in different areas. What made them cross under that bridge and stay under the bridge? Why were they concentrated in just one area? That's because they had a little bridge that they could cross on, and it was just feasible for them to get there. There were too many of them. I am surprised that they were able to be contained there.
Yeah.
Because I don't understand how they did it. But of course, these people were going back and forth getting food from Mexico. That border is wide open. Nobody was stopping anything.
We have just a few seconds left. I'm curious what you want the president to know.
Well, we need for him to take control of this. We've got immigration laws on the books, and we want him to take them and use them. Mayorga just reported that only if they're a threat, they're going to be deported. I mean, really, how many people can we afford to keep in the United States? Taxpayers, we're being taxed, and then we have to supply stuff for them. No, it's just not fair on us. We're never done with these people. We have too many refugees coming into the state of Texas. We just don't have the money. I mean, we're running out of our funds because we're being taxed on everything. The prices on everything is going up, and Biden is just sitting there doing nothing.
Bea Vallejo, thank you for joining us this morning and giving us your take on this. And do me a favor and keep us updated on the situation in Del Rio. Thank you.
Thank you.
Of course. Todd.
Dozens of National Guard members from South Dakota will answer the call from the Pentagon to help out at the southern border. We have details on their deployment now in our top story at 5. 125 members, to be exact, of the 1742nd Transportation Company will be deployed. An activation ceremony was officially held yesterday at the University of Sioux Falls. Senator John Thune says that the soldiers will try to reinforce the border and establish some order and stability in a humanitarian way. Governor Kyrsten Sinema there on your screen, Senator Mike Round, and Representative Dusty Johnson were all on hand for that activation.
I think these ceremonies are important because it gives people like office holders and like the general community an opportunity to come forward, look these servicemen and women in the eye and say thank you. We understand the cost that you are willing to pay in the defense of freedom and in the defense of keeping our nation safe, and we can't thank you enough.
This will be a 9 to 12 month deployment for the soldiers. In July, Governor Noem sent 50 South Dakota soldiers to the border following Texas Governor Greg Abbott's request for help.
120 members of the Maine National Guard are now on the way to the U.S. southern border. Governor Janet Mills wishing them a safe deployment at a ceremony that was held at the Portland Jetport earlier today. The 488th Military Police Company will be monitoring mobile and remote video surveillance camera systems to provide updates to Border Patrol agents. The men and women of that group will remain at the border for 1 year.
Governor Kim Reynolds is heading to the U.S.-Mexico border in Texas Wednesday. According to the office of the Idaho governor, she'll join 9 other governors to see what's happening along the border. This is the governor's first trip down to the Texas border since taking office. She joined 25 other governors a few weeks ago, asking to sit down with President Biden about the crisis on the border. Reynolds decided this past summer to send more than 24 Iowa State troopers to help out in Del Rio, Texas. The mission cost the state more than $300,000. Now, we did reach out to Governor Kim Reynolds' office for more information. We have yet to hear back, but we will keep you updated if we do hear more.
Governor Brad Little will join 9 other governors to visit the U.S.-Mexico border this coming Wednesday. It's to witness the crisis firsthand and reveal their proposed solutions. Governor Little will also tour the Rio Grande River and hear personal accounts from Texas agents. It comes after President Biden did not agree to the governor's request to meet on the issue. Governor Little said last week Idaho is experiencing a surge in drug overdoses due to cheap methamphetamine and fentanyl. He says those supplies come across the loose border with Mexico.
Former Border Patrol Chief Rodney Scott, who just retired in August, told us the threat from illegal immigration is real and serious.
We have nation-state threats. We have terrorist threats we can't get into in this type of a forum, but they're real, they exist, and they want to come across that border. Statistically, it always includes rapists, murderers, potential terrorists. Every single year, if you look at CBP statistics publicly available, those all exist in who we actually catch. So to think that there's not just as bad or worse people in those getting away would be naive.
So when you hear Secretary Mayorkas say the border is as secure now as it was before, what do you say?
That's just not true. And while many of the political appointees assigned currently literally just lacked the knowledge and the expertise, that they could make a statement like that and believe that it was true, he's a very smart guy. He's got a lot of experience in Homeland Security. He knows what he's doing. He knows the impacts. I've sat in a room and heard some of the comments he made. He knows what's going on, and he knows that border is not as secure today as it was on January 19th.
Over the next 2 days, we will dig deep on the issue of border security, immigration, in our exclusive interview with Rodney Scott, again, just retired in August as the head of Border Patrol. That, again, is Tuesday and Wednesday on Special Report.
Republican activists in Cobb County have voted to censor Governor Kemp, and the reason they say that he failed to curb undocumented immigration.
The resolution is merely an opinion, but supporters of the governor fear it will weaken him as he heads into re-election next year. 11 Live's Doug Richards looks at why it matters.
Governor Brian Kemp is a Republican who is under some fire from his fellow Republicans, ranging from former President Trump to some grassroots Republicans in Georgia who like Trump better than they like Governor Kemp.
I got a big truck, just in case I need to round up criminal illegals.
When he ran for governor in 2018, one of Brian Kemp's ads promised to take on undocumented immigration. Cobb County's Republican committee voted to censure Kemp for failing to keep his promise. Debbie Dooley says she helped write it.
These resolutions are just a way of communicating to elected officials how grassroots Republicans feel. That's all they are.
Dooley says county Republican organizations across Georgia have passed resolutions censuring Kemp. Kemp supporter Jason Shepard resigned from Cobb's Republican committee after its vote.
It's just the fundamental unfairness of this resolution. I think what happened is people who are still mad at Governor Kemp wanted their pound of flesh, and this was the vehicle they used it.
A faction of the Republican Party continues to baselessly challenge the results of the 2020 election, which flipped Georgia out of former President Trump's column. Shepard says that faction was behind the attack on Kemp,
who's been a complete disaster on election integrity.
Trump himself fueled it during a rally in Perry 2 weeks ago when he made a not entirely serious endorsement of Democrat Stacey Abrams.
Stacey, would you like to take his place? It's okay with me.
I think there's too many Republicans who are right now willing to vote and against their own principles just so they can receive their pound of flesh for what they perceive as deficiencies during the 2020 presidential election.
Shepard says Kemp will still thrive because Republicans backed his pro-business policies during the pandemic. Dooley disagrees.
Brian Kemp is the one that weakens the entire Republican ticket, and that's what Republicans need to be concerned about.
Dooley is among the few Republicans in Georgia who thinks Kemp is in danger of losing the Republican primary for governor. It could happen, she says, if former President Trump decides to endorse one of his Republican opponents before the primary.
Any given day at the Chinese American Planning Council, immigrants from all over Brooklyn receive help. Now that help includes recovering from a disaster. Tropical storm Ida devastating parts of New York. families losing everything. FEMA providing grants to help victims get back on their feet, but a whole community is being left out.
When folks reached out, a lot of people from the undocumented the community were finding that they're not eligible for any of these grants.
Leaving undocumented New Yorkers very vulnerable. No help finding new housing, replacing lost treasures, or even paying for funerals. So the city and state stepped up, creating a $27 million fund to address this. Steve May and the Chinese American Planning Council, or the CPC, dealing with the Brooklyn requests.
This could go a long way in terms of making folks not only be able to survive, but be able to kind of really house them.
The most one can get is $72,000, $36,000 for housing, and $36,000 for other needs. 5 other nonprofits throughout the city, upstate, and Long Island are handling requests for their area. In the Bronx, Catholics are in charge.
These are families that really were left without anything. Their basement were flooded, their cars were flooded, and they really have no other recourse. This is such a relief, a welcome relief.
Catholic Charities New York handling the request there. It's not just money. For many, it's a lifeline. On the Upper West Side, Emily Druby, Currents News.
The next round of the Golden State stimulus payments are set to go out tomorrow. This round will include paper checks as well. They could take up to a few weeks to arrive, though. If you receive the payments through direct deposit, they say the money should be in your account within the next few days. As for who qualifies, in this round, those who make up to $75,000 could get $600. Those who qualified for the first round of checks will now receive $500. Undocumented immigrants who have been left out of federal stimulus bills may also receive payments. You have to file your 2020 taxes by October 15th to qualify. So far, the Franchise Tax Board has sent out 2 rounds of payments to about 2.6 million people.
U.S. Appeals Court on Thursday, September 30th, allowed the Biden administration to keep expelling illegal migrants due to COVID-19 risks. The border policy, known as Title 42, materialized under the Trump administration when the COVID-19 pandemic started to reveal its devastating power in March 2020. Under the policy, officials can directly return illegal migrants without court hearings or asylum screenings. This was justified to prevent the spread of COVID-19. The Biden administration has recently resumed Title 42 to counter the massive surge of Haitian asylum seekers arriving at Del Rio, Texas. Using the Title 42 policy, the administration rapidly expelled thousands of people, including families with small children, back to Haiti. The administration does not screen all migrants for COVID-19 unless they show symptoms. The Customs and Border Protection, CBP, said it could not afford the procedure in crowded stations. Title 42 was ordered to be suspended by the end of September by a district court judge after civil rights groups in the American Civil Liberties Union, ACLU, filed a lawsuit against the measure, Axios reported. We were making progress in the negotiations, getting thousands of families to safety through the exemption process we created, a Clu's lead attorney on the case, Lee Gellern, told Axios. But minimizing the damage of the Title 42 policy was never the goal, it was ending it completely. The judge argued that the expulsion will strip the asylum seekers from the opportunity to seek humanitarian benefits, to which they are entitled, according to Reuters. The order looks to protect families only and does not include single adults. The outlet said the court decided the Biden administration has satisfied the stringent requirements for the district judge's order to be postponed. The ACLU was disappointed but vowed to keep challenging Title 42. If the Biden administration really wants to treat asylum seekers humanely, it should end this lawless policy now and withdraw its appeal, Gellert said in a statement. The recent influx of illegal migrants in Del Rio comprises mostly Haitian nationals. Their country has been struggling through poverty, hunger, earthquake aftermaths, political unrest, and surging street crimes. According to CBS News, under Title 42, the Biden administration has largely deported single migrants. Data from CBP said 19% of the families crossing the U.S. border illegally were expelled, whereas some 80% of the families have been spared from the pandemic border policy. In terms of the Haitians, the U.S. had carried out 57 deportation flights to Haiti as of Thursday night, removing 6,100 migrants in just 12 days.
I can see it in
Palo Alto, where I work at Stanford. But in the long run, it's going to impact the Mexican American lower and middle classes, because when you have these people from Central America, they go in, the first thing they do in the class, they'll say, you're a gringo, you don't speak Spanish, to a third generation Mexican American kid. Or they'll have crime, or you will not have advanced placement courses because you'll have to return to the bilingual paradigm. And the people who pay that price are these local communities in California and the American Southwest that are mostly Mexican American. They're progressing just, if I could be reductionist, along the trajectory of Italian Americans. That, if I say today Cuomo or Giuliani, you can't tell by the Italian name what their affiliation is, because they've assimilated. They were Catholic, Southern European, they came from Sicily and Southern Italy. It took longer. But basically, until this wave where we gave up on assimilation and controlled borders, they were starting to mimic the patterns of Italian Americans.
And you think that's changing?
Absolutely. I mean, there's a wide open border today. It reverberates through our whole society. So we're telling people, you must be vaccinated. I don't want to get into the science of that, but citizens are supposed to be vaccinated, but not 2 million people coming across the border unvetted, or 100,000 refugees are not going to be asked to be vaccinated, but the soldiers who escort them at risk to their lives have to be vaccinated. The vaccination is not the point. It's why do we make it harder on a citizen than a non-citizen? That's what I'm just...
And what is I've noticed the same, and I see it on a bunch of different levels.
Yeah.
But it's always the same theme. We make it harder on the citizen than on the person.
I think it's partly a generic idea that the underdog, the left, always wants to romanticize somebody who's poor and coming here, and we're going to have different roles, sort of like affirmative action for immigrants. But there is a racial component to it. I think the left, in this kindy wokeness, anti-racist, you have to be racist if you're going to be an anti-racist. If we had European poor coming from Eastern Europe in droves, I think they would have no tolerance for them at all. So I do think there's an ethnic element. There's so many catalysts for illegal migration. Mexico wants the $60 billion that it shares with Central American remittances. They want a safety valve, march across the border, not on Mexico City, when we're corrupt and we're racist. And they are racist compared to the way they treat their indigenous people. Then we have the La Raza.
Aggressively racist.
Absolutely. And then we have the La Raza movement that wants the changing demography. We have the Democratic Party that flipped California, Nevada, Colorado. They think Texas and Arizona. They've done Mexico. So they're a factor. And then we had the corporate world where, it really drove down wages. You hire somebody. And everybody said, well, yeah, but it's not that different when you pay somebody $6 or $8 in cash versus 10 or 12. But it was different because the hardest workers in the world are people from Oaxaca. They were desperately poor, and I've never seen people work that hard, at least the first generation.
Very hard.
Very hard. Wonderful people, hardworking, and exploited. And that was what was ironic about the Democratic Party, that they destroyed their old union base, or the lower middle classes of all tribes and races, because they bought into this open borders idea.